GAS, Gear Acquisition Syndrome. Many people suffer from this. I'll be discussing it as it relates to synthesizers, but I've seen this particular syndrome pop up amongst guitarists as well, so this definitely applies more broadly than even just those two types of gearhounds, but I'm going to be talking about it specifically through the lens of synthesizers. If you're lazy and can't be bothered to watch the whole video, the TLDR is TLDW. The solution to GAS is to dedicate yourself to making music with your synths and embracing the limitations of not having enough synths as a positive creative tool. Embracing limitations is the birthplace of creativity. Okay, so what is gear acquisition syndrome really? In short, it's hoarding. More specifically, it's the mindset and behavior which, if left unchecked, will develop into full-blown hoarding of synthesizers. This syndrome rests upon a set of axioms. Axiom 1. Synths are the best. Axiom 2. There is an optimal amount of synths to have. Axiom 3. The optimal amount of synths to have is your current amount of synthesizers plus at least one. The problem with gear acquisition syndrome is that the axioms which give rise to it are broadly correct, except the last one, which is only correct under certain conditions. The first axiom is so obviously correct that I don't even see the need to spend any time defending it. Synths are the best. The second axiom is also correct. There is an optimal amount of synths to have. The optimal amount is dependent on a variety of factors, however, and can actually be somewhat difficult to discern. Clearly understanding all of these factors and assessing how many synths you actually need can be tricky, as this number isn't static. But a good shorthand, especially in one's early stages of synthesizing, is to adopt Axiom 3. It isn't that Axiom 3 is inherently incorrect, it's just that it isn't always correct. Axiom 3 is good for a time. The problem is that despite it being good for a time, it won't always be good, and it's easy to assume that it will serve you well into the future. This is where the mistake occurs, and all hoarding behavior that flows from this is a reflection on this set of faulty foundations. So how does one determine what the optimal amount of synths actually is? This is a tricky question to answer, and requires an engagement with your purposes behind your synthesis that go deeper than just synthesizing for its own sake. I don't want to shame the aimless knob twisters. If aimlessly twisting your knobs brings you satisfaction, I'm not looking to take that away from you, but to save oneself from gas, we must dive deeper into the murky depths of the mind of the synthesist. Before someone comes to accept the first axiom, that synths are the best, they will typically have zero synths. An extension of this is that once someone understands the basic truth of Axiom 1, the second axiom becomes self-evident, that there is an optimal amount of synths to have. So to remedy their current situation of being synthless, they employ the third axiom, which at this early stage in the development of the synthesist is correct and true, that the optimal amount of synths to have is the current amount plus at least one. If the current amount is 0, then raising that number to at least 1 is an important step in the right direction. But our newborn synthesist is new to this world and may not be wise to its tricks. The third axiom, whilst motivated by a good principle and true for a time, eventually breaks down and stops being true. The problem is a lot of people fail to recognize this, and this axiom motivates so much spending behavior. This belief is expressed in a variety of ways through much of the content one finds within SynthTube and the internet communities of synth lovers in general. So many people come together to share in their interest in synths, which results in a pretty cool community. But many people have fallen victim to the belief that one more synth will bring them closer to optimal synthness. This belief permeates the community and is hard to resist against, even after one may have already passed the threshold of an optimal amount of synths. This is because they haven't properly assessed what the optimal amount of synths for them actually is. This misunderstanding perpetuates gas, so in order to overcome gas, we need to be conscious of this misunderstanding. I believe I've sufficiently explained how this misunderstanding comes to be, so now the question is, what can we do about it? The main thing we need to understand is that there is a reason you accepted the first axiom, so you need to answer for yourself. Why did you realize that synths are the best? What is it about synths that brings value to your life? I'll give you a hint. They are musical instruments which can be used to create and perform music with. The reason for owning synths is to have unfettered access to the tools of creation and performance. Now, creating music can be tricky, especially if you want that music to be good, but doing it a lot will make you better at it over time. Creating and performing music is a process of allowing an instrument to become an extension of your physical body. Vocal cords are embedded into the human body. External instruments function as an extension of ourselves in a similar manner as our voice. Vocal training is consciously deepening our interaction with and control over our vocal cords and our voice. Learning how to develop this connection with an instrument is a bit different in practice than singing or speaking is, but as they are both a physical extension out from our mind, they're actually quite similar. The mind sees the object of the vocal cords and plays it to express itself, or the mind sees the synthesizer or guitar or drum kit, etc., and plays it to express itself. The synthesizer is a really cool instrument in the range of expression it gives one access to, but in order to gain access and control over that expression, we need to practice. With sufficient practice, we become fluent in synthesis, but this is effort, and can at times be unsatisfying and can feel like a slog. Practicing doesn't always feel fun, and the diminishing returns are real. At the early stages of learning, when you have no skill points, adding one skill point is... You've gone from 0 to 1. That's an infinitely large jump. Adding another skill point is a 100% increase in your skill. When you have 10 skill points, the next skill point is a 10% increase. When you have 1,000 skill points, adding one skill point is a 0.1% increase. Faced with the incremental nature of improvement, it can be discouraging, as you will find yourself in a position where you're not improving in the same way you used to be. The frank truth is, you need to be putting consistent time and effort in to improve your skills and maintain what skills you already have. This requires discipline. The early stages can be fueled entirely by just pure drive, but eventually one needs to learn to convert that drive into discipline because it's quite easy to lose the excitement, especially when improvements aren't giving you the amount of dopamine they used to, because the level of improvement per effort put in isn't the same. Mix in the general pressures of life, and specifically like work, having to share your energies with a workplace which is intent on sucking all productive value from you, and one can find themselves in a situation where synthesizing just isn't fun anymore. So, whilst there might have been a time when you remembered enjoying synthesizing, you find yourself in a place where, in an immediate sense, it just isn't bringing the value to your life it once had. So how do you move past this? Well, the last time you really remember being super excited about this stuff was when you were researching the last synth you bought. Then when you got it and played with it for the first few weeks or months. So, like the clever little dopamine slave you are, wanting more of that sweet, sweet dopamine, you decide to reward yourself with a new synth. Obviously, obtaining a new synth will bring back that spark of life, of joy and creation. It will give you the inspiration to create again and to get back to those feelings your synthesizers used to bring you, which made existence feel kind of justifiable. It will fix whatever hole has developed within your soul. So you buy the new synth, spending weeks or perhaps months researching every little intricacy about it, learning every detail of its construction, signal path, workflow, watching endless videos about it on YouTube to see everything it can or can't do, what other synths it might sound good with, what styles of music it does well, which famous musicians might have used it, what limitations does it have which might need to be supplemented by that one other synth you've got your eye on. Now, let's take a step back and have a look at what's happening here. Are we noticing anything? The hunt for a new synth, the process of discerning which synth is the best, then paying it every ounce of your attention to confirm it's the right choice, slowly putting money away until you can afford it. You seeing what's happening? You have purpose. You've managed to combine your love of synths into a real-world application of your time and energy. Then comes that moment. You walk into your local music store, slap down a few $1,000s on the table for that one synth you've been dreaming of for months now. The synth which will reinvigorate you and bring new creative energy to your music. Then you go home, plug it in, play with it for a few weeks or months until the excitement of shiny new synth wears off. Then what? You find yourself back in the exact same place as where you started. So you ask, what other synth or piece of equipment would complement my current setup? And the cycle continues. This cycle, in any other context, is referred to as an addiction. Axiom 2, there is an optimal amount of synths to have. Axiom 3, that amount is the current amount plus 1. In order to break out of this cycle, we need to address and change Axiom 3. And in its place, I'd like to propose a reformed iteration of Axiom 3. The optimal amount of synths to have is the minimum amount necessary in order to create and or perform the music you want to create. So how many is that really? Okay, so it depends on many things. If you're newer to synthesis and only have one synth, see how far you can get using only that one synthesizer. You will run into limitations. There will be sounds you want that this synth can't provide. Stay within those limitations as long as you can tolerate. Then find a second synth which can fill in the gaps left by the first synth. Only add a new synth into the equation if absolutely necessary. The question on your mind should never be, how many other synths can I add to this setup? But instead, how few synths can I get away with having in my setup? So to distill all of this down further, your focus needs to shift from the synths themselves and onto the music or creative product you intend on creating or performing with these synths. This can take a variety of forms and is where the real work begins. Okay, first, select a purpose. Do you want to make beats? Do you want to make albums? Do you want to make dance music? Do you want to be performing music live? Do you want to, just do jams? Do you want to make soundtracks for films? Envision the type of final product you'd most like to create and think big. An album might seem like more than you can handle, and that could be viewed as a reason not to do it. But I think this thinking needs to be inverted. If an album is more than you can handle, that's exactly why you should do it. You'll never know how to put an album together unless you do it. And, okay, maybe you'll do it wrong a few times in a row, but that's necessary to work out how to do it right. There's plenty of resources online to help you with it if you decide that that's what you want to do. Or maybe you want to make music for films. How do you get started with that? Okay, so let's be realistic. It's unlikely that Christopher Nolan will choose some complete unknown with no resume over Hans Zimmer for his next project. Okay, so let's break this into smaller steps. You need a portfolio. So put a portfolio together. Make a score for a movie that's in the public domain for practice. Night of the Living Dead, one that immediately comes to mind. Or find someone who's starting work on short films and offer to help out. Just, like in general, just YouTube short film makers, contact them. Be like, I can help out with this. Like, I just want to add a caveat to the last thing I said. If you're going to be approaching people online to offer to, do work for them, like, don't be annoying. Some people are just not going to want to work with you. You need to be like really cool with that, and don't be pushy. Don't harass people. Just don't harass people online. Be good and respectful to people online. Yeah, when approaching people to like offer to do free work and stuff for them, you got to not be annoying. Like, maybe do some research into the best way to try and approach people to offer free work, because this is an area you can definitely become like really annoying and just piss people off. So be careful. You build your name, you build your resume. Eventually, your name has some clout and you can start actually getting paid for your work. But you got to start somewhere. If you decide on the path you want to take, then the next step is breaking that path down into as many smaller steps as you're mentally equipped to do, then working out which of those smaller steps you can actually manage. Figure out the end goal and begin engaging in the behaviors that someone who's already achieved that goal had to engage in to get there. Might sound tricky to the uninitiated, but I promise it isn't. Once you've identified the smaller steps you can actually take to move yourself towards that goal, the real work begins. This next part isn't easy. You have to put in the work. Synths as a practice and a hobby might exist in your mind as something which is purely fun. Therefore, turning it into work isn't something you want to do. All I can say is, if you don't allow your synths to assist you as tools towards a larger goal, you'll need to find another way to allow them to make your life better. A lot of musicians are content just playing music and not turning it into anything much more than that. It's the thing they do to have a bit of fun on the weekend, and if something happens, if they get noticed or accidentally accumulate a fan base, well, that's great. But their primary motivator is just playing music. That can be a very good path for some people, especially when paired with job security and a fulfilling set of personal relationships. But even in that context, synths are merely a vehicle to allow a musician to engage with a local scene and provide some fun on the weekends. Now, in case there's anyone watching this video who's already amassed a sizable collection of synths, the questions you need to be asking yourself become a bit trickier. First, do you need that many synths? How are your synths contributing to your ability to create and perform as an artist? Does having that many synths actually in some manner impact negatively your ability to create and perform? If it does, what can you afford to let go of? Working back from here is trickier, and the difficulty will really depend on how far gone you are. I've seen some pretty ridiculous setups online that have gone way, way overboard. If you have a setup which looks like this, try carefully thinking through those questions I posed just before. And if you come to the decision that you have the exact right amount of synths, then maybe actually seek professional therapy. You can probably afford it, and you might need it. I will allow the slight caveat that collecting synths for historical purposes might be a thing. This video is really meant for people who have creative intentions, though. So if you are a collector with no explicit musical intentions, then as long as it's all working for you, good. Okay, now for those looking to downsize their collections, one can rehome their synths by selling them on the open market, but also organizations like MESS exist, MESS, Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio. Brilliant organization. It's a not-for-profit which has a large collection of synths. Members of the public can pay to spend time with these synths, to record and even just play with them. MESS accepts donations, both in the form of money and in instruments. By contributing to MESS, you can support the work they do to run some very cool programs and as well to maintain their collection. This is a public good. From my research, I've only found one other equivalent organization, the Vintage Synthesizer Museum in Los Angeles, California. If you're aware of other organizations that allow members of the public to hire time with synths, please let me know in the comments section. I really want to know, and I'll add those orgs into the description of this video. So whilst you can sell your gear for money, you also have the option of donating it to MESS, or an equivalent organization, which is an amazing way to give back to the community and those who can't afford to buy this level of equipment, but who can afford to pay to spend some time with it. Yeah, I couldn't find any info on the Vintage Synthesizer Museum's donation policy, so if you're truly interested in giving them synthesizers, probably just reach out and find out how to do that. I'll link all other orgs doing similar work in the description as I become aware of them, so please, if you know of more of these orgs, leave a comment. I only recently discovered MESS and will be making the pilgrimage at some point to go check out their synths and touch a CS80 in real life. That'd be sick. And I'll probably make a video about that as well whenever that happens. So if you live in Melbourne, Australia and have GAS, maybe consider supporting MESS. Instead of buying more gear, maybe go use their gear instead. Another aspect of GAS is that wanting to dedicate funds towards a hobby is normal and understandable. It makes you feel more engaged with and committed to said hobby, but you can find other ways to spend money on hobbies, such as commissioning artwork for album covers or paying video people to make music videos, etc., or just get good at managing finances and hoard your money so you can afford to work less and dedicate more of your time towards synthesizing. To conclude, having GAS means you are addicted to buying synthesizers. The solution is to trade in your addiction to buying synthesizers for an addiction to using synthesizers. In order to be addicted to using synthesizers, you need to be using them for something. You need to sort your life out enough to work out how synthesizers can be put in use in order to bring you closer to some creative goal. It can be very easy and fun to get caught in the weeds of researching synths, which can be a healthy part of engaging with synthesizers, but having a clear understanding of how they fit within your personal goals is essential. With creative goals, there is no one-size-fits-all approach, so this will require introspection from you to figure out how they fit within your specific individual situation. And once you've figured that out, it's up to you to then cultivate the discipline required to move towards that goal. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you agree with the breakdown I presented of GAS, or have I perhaps missed something important in this video? As well, I'd love to hear about your experiences with GAS. Have you suffered from it before? Are you suffering from it currently? Have you overcome it? If so, how did you do that? What helped you in that effort? And to those suffering from GAS currently, how do you think you can pull yourself out of that spiral? What creative thing do you think you'll aim yourself at? I want to hear about it. And one last thought, let's keep things respectful in the comments. We're all in this together, and we need to have respect for each other and each other's opinions and perspectives. And again, if you know of organizations similar to MESS operating in other parts of the world, please let me know in the comments. Those will be added to the description. Okay, so if you watched all of that, thank you, much appreciated. Hitting like and subscribe would be immense. Also, if you like analog synth music, which I assume you do considering you just watched this video, my band has a channel where we release music. We have an album out as well. We do jams and other stuff. And also, if you'd like to support this channel monetarily, the best way you can do that would be to contribute to my Patreon. Okay, bye.